volare, wow, wow, cantare, whoa. Buddy, how nice to see you.
I'm doing great. You guys look wonderful.
Hey, so do you.
Yeah,
So do
great.
you. Good to
Boy,
see you.
it's been 50 years. 50 years
50 years.
since you graduated Farmingdale High School.
Oh, God.
It doesn't seem like that long. It really doesn't.
No, it's a blink of an eye, right?
Now, Buddy, when you were in high school, did you realize how famous your father was?
Yes. But especially when I was younger, much younger, I thought everybody's parents were. But by the time I got into high school, I mean, what was I, 15, 16? I knew then really how influential Dad was and the people he was hanging out with, and, how lucky I was to have him as a dad.
Your teacher thought it was really cool that you had a father named Buddy Greco.
Your father hung out with some of the most famous singers. Who were the people that he hung out with and that he knew?
He hung out with basically the Rat Pack, which was Frank Sinatra, Sammy Davis, Dean Martin, Peter Lawford,
Yes.
Joey Bishop, I think. Probably the tightest with Dean and Frank, because he
Mhm.
was on Dean's show about 7, 8 times.
Right.
And he was on TV quite a bit. Going back to this Rat Pack idea, he had a special privilege regarding Frank Sinatra's funeral.
Yeah, Dad was so tight with Frank that he ended up being one of the pallbearers at his funeral, and he got a special, really beautiful gold ring that I since have inherited from Dad.
Oh, great.
So that was really nice. Him and Frank were really just tremendously close, and Frank always called him Daig, short for Dago. And I've actually got footage when it was Frank's birthday, I think in 1989 in December, and he was in Atlantic City, and Dad was playing just down the street. I wasn't there for this, but I saw the footage, and they brought a big cake out for Frank, and Dad popped out. And it was a total surprise, and they ended up singing him. Frank and Sammy ended up singing "Lady as a Tramp," so it was pretty cool to see.
1, 2, 1, 2, 3.
That's why the lady, that's why the lady, that's why the lady is a tramp. She gets too hungry for dinner at 8. She loves the dinner but never comes late. She'll never dine with people she hates. That's why the lady is a tramp. She won't go to Harlem in ermines or pearls. She doesn't talk to those barons and those earls. Won't dish the dirt with the rest of the girls down. That's why the lady is a tramp. She loves the free, fresh wind in her hair, life without care. She's broke, but it's okay. It's California, it's cold and it's damp. That's why the lady is a tramp. She loves the free, fresh wind in her hair, life without care. She's broke, who cares? It's California, it's cold and it's damp, and that's why the lady, that's why the lady, that's why the lady is a tramp.
I went on the YouTube this morning and I found what Bob told me was your favorite song of your father's, Around the World.
Yes.
It is absolutely the swingingest, greatest version of that song I have ever heard. He is really some artist.
It was one of his 2 number ones. It was one of his 2 gold records. And a quick story, if I may tell you, when I was very small, about 4 or 5, when that song was out, he would invite me on stage to sing that with him. I remember sitting there in the seats and giggling, and him saying, "Who was that? Who just giggled? Come up here." And I was very, very shy, still am. And my sister Cindy had to say, Bud, go ahead, go on up. And I walked on up to the Copacabana stage. And I just remember looking behind me and seeing the band just kind of up in the air, almost like the Ricky Ricardo sort of thing.
Yeah,
And I sang Around the World with him on stage
you did.
at the Copacabana and a couple other places on Long Island. That was really amazing.
The song "Around the World" that's from the movie, isn't it? "Around the World in 80 Days." I mean, I don't know if they didn't have the
I don't
lyrics.
know if Dad's version is in that, but I remember a few years back when there was a show on TV called Pan Am.
Mhm.
They actually used Dad's version as the theme, and he was so
remember
elated.
that.
Listening to your CD, you have your CD there, Bud?
I unfortunately do not. I know you guys have it.
I have it. I'm going to show the audience. I know you have a secret track on that CD, which is, I guess it's number 11, which is your dad and you. And what were you playing again?
I think it was his version of "I've Got You Under My Skin."
That's
I was
exactly.
lucky enough to be Dad's drummer for 5 years. I just came out here in 2007, not realizing that was ever going to happen. And I got to tour the world with my dad.
Now, did you play along with his songs at home before you ever got into his band? No, you never did that. Huh?
What I did was when I first got out here in 2007 to visit Dad, he ended up going away to London for a couple of weeks.
Uh-huh.
And I knew Danny. So I said, Danny, why don't we just go in the club for a couple of hours and woodshed some songs? Let me see, because he thought it was a great idea. But while Dad was away for those few weeks, me and Danny were in the club and we just woodshed 50 songs of Dad's. And we had to imagine the piano and Dad singing. So that was pretty challenging for me. And Danny had already been his bass player for years, so he knew the stuff inside out. Dad came back. I said, Dad, can we go in the club for a few minutes? We just want to show you something. He goes, all right. I get behind the kid. Danny picks up his bass. Can we just run through Skin? And we played it just like the track. And he goes, how about we do Girl Talk? And I'm going in my, okay. Took the brushes out. We went on.
They like to chat about the dresses they will wear tonight. They chew the fat about their tresses and the neighbors fight. Inconsequential things that men don't really care to know become essential things that women find so apropos. But that's a dame, they're all the same. It's just a game, they call it girl talk. Girl talk. They all meow about the ups and downs of all their friends. The who, the how, the why, they dish the dirt, it never ends. The weaker sex, the speaker sex, we mortal males behold. But though we joke, we wouldn't trade you for a ton of gold. So baby, stay and gab away, but hear me say that after girl talk, talk to me. They all meow about the ups and downs minds of all their friends. The who, the how, the why, they dish the dirt, it never ends. The weaker sex, the speaker sex, we mortal males behold. But though we joke, we wouldn't trade you for a ton of gold. It's all been planned, so take my hand. Please understand, the sweetest girl talks of me.
Okay, that's pretty cool. And I said, Dad, can we do MacArthur Park? Because I always loved his instrumental arrangement of it. He did a great instrumental, which I thought very much rocked. And I wanted to play that since I was 18 with him. So we did it. I kind of kicked the heck out of it. He turns around and he goes, leaning on his piano, and he says, how long you been playing like this? I said, Dad, I've been playing like this my whole life. He couldn't believe it. He was kind of knocked out. He fired his drummer the next day, and I toured the world with my dad for 5 years. And
Wow.
it was amazing. It was
But,
amazing.
and you know, you've got to remember, your dad was a really, really 1% of the best in jazz talent. I mean,
Absolutely.
he won awards, didn't he? He won jazz awards.
He won awards. He won his first award when he was 3. And he was probably, I think, one of the greatest keyboard players. In fact, Nat King Cole and Art Tatum thought my dad was phenomenal.
I think he's phenomenal too.
He is.
That track on your version there with your dad on your CD is absolutely terrific. I didn't know. I mean, your dad is phenomenal as a singer, and then to have him reveal this great piano playing ability. I mean,
It's true,
just
because
fantastic.
most of the 60s and 70s, he was always up singing and some other fellow was playing. It wasn't until the 80s that he said, I'm going to go back to playing too. I'm sorry.
Yeah, that's when I got into your father's music, because at that time, back in the 60s, I wasn't too crazy about what's going on in rock and roll music. The Beatles hadn't come along yet. And so I bought a Buddy Greco's greatest hits, and there's this MacArthur Park. And I said, why would they put this great piano player on? And then it dawned on me, you know, I'm not the sharpest tack on the wall. So it dawned on me, it was your father who was playing the piano. I said, oh my God, he's terrific.
Now, your dad started with Benny Goodman, right?
He was Benny's band leader in the late 40s when he was 18 up until he was 21.
Yeah.
Can you imagine the talent that when he's 18? I mean, Benny Goodman is like the jazz great, you know, of all time.
Yeah.
Amazing talent, your father had. Amazing talent. So, in fact,
One quick thing about that, Dad always thought the BG on the Benny Goodman bandstand stood for Buddy Greco.
Ah! But tell us a little bit about your band now.
So I have this band Hot Wire out here. We're actually one of the busiest bands in the Valley. You know, we're out there working 2-3 nights a week, and most musicians out here work once a month.
What covers do you do, Buddy?
We run the gamut from our favorites from Liverpool, the Beatles, all the way up to the 90s, stuff from the Smithereens.
That's right. Now, Buddy, you're so enmeshed in the music business. I mean, not only yourself, but of course your history with your dad. Do you think that the success that he met with was the result of his talent, or because he knew the right people?
I think it was about 80% talent, 20% who you knew. I mean, he was just so good, and he knew it. Dad knew it. In November '63, Dad got an invitation from the Queen of England to go do the Royal Variety Show. And he went over there on the strength of Lady as a Tramp being #1 over there. So he gets over to England in November of '63, and he sees all these people surrounding the Prince of Wales Theatre. And of course, with Dad's ego, he thinks all the people are there to see him. Little does he know there were these 4 guys inside who are taking England and Scotland and the UK by storm, in Sweden, called the Beatles.
Right.
And he met them and got to be very good friends with George Harrison for most of the rest of their lives. And they said, Mr. Greco, you've got the #1 hit in America. What do you think of the Beatles who are taking a #1 hit in the UK? What do you think of the Beatles who are taking the UK by storm? And he said, if I know anything about music, they're going to last about 6 months.
Oh, well,
And
from what I read, your dad was very, very popular in the UK.
he was
Very
more popular in the UK than he was over here, which was a bit of a shame. But what's funny is George would always remind Dad of the comment. He would go, Buddy, 6 months? And Dad would go, I'm so sorry, George. I'm so sorry.
So your dad lived in London, didn't he? He had a place
He
there?
had a flat in London, and he had a place in New York, and he had places all over the world.
And he had a supper club out there in California?
He had a supper club out here in Palm Springs, Cathedral City, from 2006, before I got here, because I didn't get here and start playing with him until 07, until it closed in 2011. We were actually in London when it closed. And it was so sad because anybody who was everybody came into Buddy Greco's, and I got to play drums with Paul Young, with Joe Pesci, with Mickey Thomas, the original Hot Lips, Sally Kellerman, Buddy Jr., I love the way you play drums. I don't know if I can say this. You might edit this out. I hope you don't think ill of me. She smoked a joint with me that night after the show because she just absolutely loved the way I played. Keely Smith came in. I got to play with her. Anybody who was anybody, Nancy Wilson of the Supremes, the girl from Three's Company, Suzanne Summers, she lived right up the hill from us. Wow. So I was blessed to play with some of these people. You guys should have been out here. You guys are worthy of it. You guys are so talented. It boggles my mind. And I knew you guys were talented then, but you guys just didn't want to let me know for some reason.
Well, you never let us know that you were a musician. So, tit for tat on that one.
I was really quiet in school.
You were.
What are some of your personal and professional goals that you've set for yourself now?
Well, even in school, everybody wanted to be sort of a rock star. And I always wanted to get out there and tour and just be, have my music heard by everybody. But as I kind of got older and got into my 30s, I just realized I just wanted to be a working musician. So I can still compose and I can still make my albums and I can still be interviewed by people. I've been interviewed by magazines all over the world the last 10 years. I'm being interviewed by you guys, which is so gracious. And I hope maybe we can do this again, because I know you've got so many people I'm sure want to be on your show. And I should be interviewing you two guys on your show. So you guys should let me have my head and let me do that to you guys and your lovely wife, Dave.
Well, thank you.
I got to play with my dad, one of the greatest musicians, which I've wanted to do since I was a small child. I got to finally do that. And I got to play in some of the greatest houses in the world with my dad, some of the best rooms, Carnegie Hall over in the UK. I got to play some of the theaters in the UK that the Beatles played in, some of the great rooms out here. In America, I got to play with my dad in New York and out here. So a lot of that stuff did come true. My songs are on the radio every now and then. And I got to be in some videos. I was shot, like I sent you guys some footage of me playing with my dad. So I've achieved a lot. I'd still like to do a lot more. I never got to meet George Harrison, which was a shame.
Yeah.
Me and Bob, obviously the biggest Beatle fans in the world. I'd love to meet Paulie and Ringo, my drumming idol. I did get to meet Buddy Rich. He gave me my hi-hat cymbals when I was 15 that I still use today.
Wow.
Buddy and Dad and George Carlin had a summer replacement show. There's so much more we have yet to talk about. I mean, Dad, I think, never really got into doing just Italian songs, like Jerry and everybody else. Dad was a swinger. There's a movie coming out about him. I got to tell you, there was a Just Big thing on Srini Lopez about a year or so ago, big documentary. There's going to be the same thing going on my dad. I was just interviewed with them about 2 months ago.
It's a documentary?
It's going to be a big documentary on Dad. There's a big resurgence of Dad. I try and keep his memory alive out here. I run into people out here, you guys in the Coachella Valley, who saw me play with Dad at the club, which is such a thrill for me.
Mhm.
Do you
Gosh,
play
I
any
saw
of
him
his
play-
songs with your band? Do you play any of his songs? Have you tried
I
to do
don't do that, but occasionally, if there was one Italian place that hired us a couple of times, so we did Volare and a couple of songs that you guys, I'm sure, would do more justice to than me.
Oh,
But I tried my best. And God, Dad was just so amazing and very influential. Guys like Michael Bublé, Billy Joel in Rolling Stone magazine 16 years ago said, "Yeah, at the end of my show these days, I loosen my tie and I pretend I'm Buddy Greco."
Well, he was a singer, and I think that's where, all of the fame came from, other
Musician.
singers. Really,
And a
yeah,
musician.
and a musician,
yeah.
but as far as the singing is concerned, that was much more famous than the piano player, right?
yeah, I
Robert
didn't know he
Plant.
was a piano player.
Mm.
Robert Plant a few years ago said, I have the video, said, "I love all the Italian singers, but Buddy Greco is my favorite."
Yeah. Well, he had the understanding of style,
Yeah.
that singing has to have a unique style. And he took those songs, the ones that Sinatra did or Around the World, and he added his own unique style to
Yeah.
it
Yeah.
that made it so exciting.
He was the epitome also of class. He was in the tux. We all had to wear tux. If you see me, I'm there in my tux and I'm playing. Even Frank did not look as classy as Dad. And I've got
Right.
pictures of two of them. There's a great picture of Frank kissing my dad on the cheek at the Sands in '66. And only Frank would be kissing my dad on the cheek. Who else would do that? We got to talk about my dad some more because he is a legend and he's on the Walk of Fame
Well,
out
we also-
here. Unfortunately, I never really had any relationship with my dad. Really, he was just this guy who came through New York.
He was married several times, wasn't he, buddy? 5 times.
Sometimes.
Wow.
My
Any
mom
famous-
was number one.
Okay.
I mean, they were all great people. I mean, wife number two, Danny Crane, was actually in the Frank sort of chick hangout. That's how he got to her. Maggie was wife number three. She was from Toronto. She was very sweet. Look at this. I can remember their names. Wife number four. Jackie. She was a Playboy bunny.
Oh, wow.
And it's funny. Mom was the only dark-haired girl. Wives 2 through 5 were all blonde and big.
Well, were they childhood sweethearts?
My mom and dad certainly were.
Yeah, they were. Huh?
Yeah.
Your dad grew up in Philadelphia.
South Philly, where all the good singers come from. All the good singers come from.
That's not true. Sinatra came from Hoboken.
Well, that's close enough.
Now, your dad, he started his musical training very young, or when did he? I mean, he was already.
He was 3 years old, and what he did was he painted keys on a table. My grandparents were very, very, very poor. It's just crazy. I mean, he was so ridiculously talented. So for me, I was blessed for him to think that I could even play. And he, again, I not being able to read music, every now and then I would have to say, "Dad, your friend Buddy Rich couldn't read music either." And he'd say, "Shut up."
What a wonderful thing to be able to play with your father. I mean, that's really great.
I had to deliver the goods. You got to remember, this was Buddy Greco. This wasn't, Joe Schmo. I had to deliver the goods every time I sat down. And that first night at the club, I think it was September 26th, 2008. That was my first gig with Dad. I was very, very nervous. It was the opening night of the new season. Place was packed. My first night playing with Dad. There was 100 people in the audience. So I remember after the show, everybody said great. And Dad said, because Dad didn't throw compliments around really at all. He said, "You did real good tonight, bud." I said, "Thanks, Dad." Wow.
Wow.
And the legendary temper that we've always heard about, because he rolled a piano off in Las Vegas because some guy was blowing smoke in his face. while he was playing. And my dad kept saying, "Look, pal, I told you to stop doing this." And Dad didn't take any blank from anybody. He was a tough South Philly kid. He pushed the piano into his lap. This dude.
Wow.
Dad was pretty well protected, man. I remember going to see him at Madison Square Garden. Everybody was packing. It was unbelievable.
Really?
We had dinner with Columbo before he got it. His mom. We walked into this door somewhere in Manhattan that looked like a dive, and we walked down these stairs, opened this door, and there were these opulent chandeliers. And Columbo's mother comes up to me. "You musician like a you father?" I said, "Well, I'm trying to. You good boy like a you father." And me and my sister were shitting a brick going, "Look who we're hanging out with. Oh my God." It was crazy. It was crazy.
That's some
I mean,
story.
he knew everybody. I mean, he knew the guys who built Vegas because they had Dad come. Dad knew Giancana and knew all these people personally.
Wasn't your dad there 3 days before Marilyn Monroe? You had some story about that.
Dad has the last pictures ever taken at Marilyn. They were taken at Cal Neva, Frank's place. Dad was getting his hair cut. Frank was getting his hair cut. And all of a sudden, Dad said, this girl gets out of a limo wearing these light green pants, blonde hair, going, "Buddy, Buddy, hi." No, Dad had met Marilyn many years before in the late 40s because she auditioned for Benny Goodman's band. Not many people know this. And Benny said, "You're beautiful, honey, but you can't sing." So here comes Marilyn in Buddy, Frank. And my dad just happened to have his Polaroid at the time. I think there might be a couple of pictures online, you guys, if you look. Last pictures of Marilyn, Buddy Greco. And there's another picture of Dad and Marilyn hugging 3 days before she died.
Is there anything else you'd like to share with us before we have to wrap it up?
I just think Dad doesn't get the credit that he deserves. I think he was a phenomenal singer. I think he swings like nobody else. Like I said, there's a film being made of him. There's a book being written about him. I don't want people to forget who he was. And again, Michael Bublé and everybody have Dad to thank for their careers. And Michael has even said so. I just think he's very underrated. I'm trying to make sure that doesn't happen.
He is. I agree.
Well, Buddy, it's been great. I'm so glad that we hooked up. And I want to wish
great
you the best.
reconnecting with you guys. I wish we can do something and play. Maybe technology will allow us to do this at some point.
Maybe so. Maybe that would be a wonder.
We could try.
That would be wonderful.
Well, Buddy, thank you once again. I think they're going to cut us off here.
Bless you both. It's been great talking to you both. I know I'm going to be talking to you both again very soon. I can't wait to see this when it's finished. Hi, everyone. It's great to see everyone. Dad is here with me in my heart, and he says hello to everyone as well.
Oh, God bless you. God bless you. 4, 1.
Cigarette holder, which wigs me over her shoulder. She digs me out catting my satin doll. Baby, shall we go out skipping? Careful, amigo, you're flipping. Out catting my satin doll. Well, she's nobody's fool, so I'm playing it cool as can be. I'll give it a whirl, but I ain't for no girl catching me. Supersada telephone numbers, well, you know.